On September 10th, 2025, Charlie Kirk was assassinated by murderer's bullet, and we have to talk about it. So this recording is going out 5 days after Charlie Kirk was tragically and politically assassinated by a murderer in Utah Valley University. We have to talk about it. Now, if you're asking me, Manu, why are you talking about this instance of political violence? Why not all the other instances? Why not Melissa Hortman and her husband in Minnesota, the Democrats, or the attempted arson in Joshua Bear? Well, first of all, we have talked about those things, but here's the second piece. Charlie Kirk's assassination is hitting a nerve. It is hitting a nerve. And I did not make that choice. But I have a responsibility, and we as the members of the hopeful majority that stand for dialogue and conversation and constructive engagement in moments of conflict and discord have a responsibility to make something positive out of this terrible tragedy because it's for the sake of our country. It's not my choice, but this is the circumstance we're in. I put out a video 5 hours after Charlie Kirk was assassinated where I specifically stated that while I may have disagreed with Charlie on form and style oftentimes, the way he showed up to college campuses, in some ways, he was someone that understood how to manipulate the algorithm to further his ideas. I respected him. I respect his purpose. I respect his tenacity. I believe that's the heartbeat of a civic democracy. It's necessary. That same heartbeat, that same purpose, that calling of something bigger than ourselves, which speaks to civic activists from all walks of life. I understand it because it takes one to know one, even if you disagree deeply. And for those that are debating the question, was violence justified? I have one very simple thing for you. The one very simple thing I have is that violence is like poison gas. Once you let it out of the canister, there's no controlling who it affects and who it goes after. It could come for any one of us. The genie is fully out of the bottle. And that is incredibly tragic because you cannot have a democracy if you cannot talk to each other. It is that simple. That's why we built the hopeful majority from the start. I was someone that had no interest in politics, democracy, none of this stuff. I had no interest in becoming a public face for the work of bridge building and pluralism from across the country. I was a pre-med student, for crying out loud. A pre-med student. And today, as my prayers and my deep condolences are with everyone that Charlie uplifted, with Charlie's soul, with Charlie's wife, Erica, with his 2 kids. The one thing that I can't help reflecting on is the chilling effect that this is going to have on activists from across the country, from political leaders from across the country, and not just on the right, but on the left. Violence is like poison gas. Once you let it out of the canister, there's no controlling which way it goes. I have 2 thoughts and 2 thoughts only that I want to convey. You may have heard me on MSNBC, Fox News, News Nation, on Chris Cuomo's show. We'll be on podcasts throughout the next week. Our students are mobilizing from across the country, and man, I could not be more proud of our students. 10 hours after Charlie Kirk's tragic assassination, our San Jose State chapter just simply hosted a space led by Margot Catrini and team. Young people, right? Motivated not by politics, not by capitalizing on tragedy, not by being opportunistic, but by simple fact that we as human beings are social creatures that need each other in moments of difficulty, that empathy, curiosity, humility, relationship, that's the lifeblood of human relationship and understanding. And what they did was they created a space of dialogue and conversation. They had a very difficult time in the past, sometimes getting conservatives to their events, sometimes getting liberals to this event. This one, everybody showed up. And the goal was not the debate. The goal was not to win. The goal was to understand the human emotion and the pain of the people that we might not necessarily agree with. That was a tangible example of a gathering. I told Margot right after the event, I said that's probably one of 10 gatherings maybe in the United States that evening outside of our families where people felt safe and productive and constructive in just sharing their hearts out. And that's what we need more of. Over the next 2 weeks, 3 weeks, tens, if not hundreds of students, thousands of young people, Bridge USA chapters, 95 college chapters from across the country. We're going to be doing our moral responsibility and duty of standing side by side with our conservative brothers and sisters, our liberal brothers and sisters, our politically confused brothers and sisters, people like me that don't know where we stand necessarily because Frankly, my guiding light is like genuine curiosity, and I'm especially confused about certain ideas, but I'm very certain about this. We need to stand with each other to host those conversations, because if we do not, I'll tell you one thing. And it's part one of the two key central thoughts that we need to be thinking about. First is, if you're someone on the political left and you are thinking, well, man, I hated Charlie, I despised him, but I'm deeply mournful of his assassination. Good on you, because C.S. Lewis once said that intelligence is a sign of being able to hold two conflicting ideas at once. That's important. But those of you that are potentially nonchalant about this, let me tell you one thing. Charlie is now a martyr. And young people, for many young people, this is a mini tragic 9/11 for them in terms of their political formation. The same way that 9/11, the Great Recession, the tragic assassination of President John F. Kennedy, Martin Luther King, Robert F. Kennedy, World War II, these moments of American history that are key in people's psyches, this will cause a lot of young people to take up more extreme ideas. They're going to be more radicalized. They're going to be filled with righteous anger. And the solution to that righteous anger is to recognize that we have to create space for those people to understand and be heard. If you let people sit in silos, if you let people sit out there in their anger, fester in their pain, in their sadness, only more problematic challenges are going to arise for this democracy. And if we cannot see it, then I don't know where you have been living. Don't live under a rock. Live in the reality of not social media algorithms, but the reality of those young people in San Jose State and University of Missouri, those pastors in Georgia and Alabama, those civic activists from all walks of life that are motivated by a sense and belief that you cannot have a democracy if you cannot talk to each other, and we cannot let those people continue to be on their own, because that will yield more tragedy. Count my words, and man, I hope I'm wrong. This will result in a lot of young people getting more politically active, which is awesome. We need political activism. People oftentimes look at the show The Hopeful Majority and they think, oh, all this guy wants is a bunch of kumbaya bullshit. Well, here's the reality. It's not about blunting your ideological convictions. It's about understanding why people disagree with us. Because if you don't have that as a basis, you cannot solve the most important problems of our time. You absolutely cannot fight for the policy wins that you care about. And most importantly, you will be the victim. You will be the victim. And let me be clear, not of violence. That's not what I'm propagating. You will be the victim of the outrage industrial complex. And this is point number 2. We should be asking ourselves, how did we get here? Ladies and gentlemen, on the hour after Charlie Kirk's tragic assassination, I went on CNN and I flipped on this new channel, to this panel, and this woman said, "What is the way out?" And I was so angry. Yeah, believe it or not, the bridge builder, the vanilla guy that sits in the corner, was angry. Yes, we can also feel anger because we have beliefs. It's not about surrendering your beliefs. It's about understanding how we engage and disagree productively. That's a difference. I was so angry. And why was I angry? Because I've seen thousands of students from across the country on a daily basis having these conversations, hanging out with each other, working with each other, understanding each other, loving each other, caring for who different people have come from different walks of life, because that's important. And yet you see a very different reality out there on X, on Instagram. Yes, it's time to call out platforms. It's time to call out influencers on the left and the right, because we live at a time when outrage sells and conversation does not. We live at a time where we are more interested in getting 1,000 more likes and getting $100 sponsorship than we are in trying to have honest and productive conversations. We're more important and interested by our sense of self-importance when we see the algorithms tick up our video because we jumped on that React video so quickly and we said the craziest shit to turn out our base, even when we know oftentimes it's not true. For the sake of what? For the sake of our democracy? Of course not. Don't lie to yourself. Don't lie to yourself. Don't lie to the American people. Don't lie to the social media audience. They are too smart. Don't be fooled. And that's why we need people of the hopeful majority out there, active, Bridge USA chapter leaders, organizations from across the country that are working hard. There has never been a more important time to stand for conversation and dialogue. The outrage industrial complex. Outrage sells, nuance doesn't. If you're an influencer, if you're a company, if you're a news network, if you're a podcast, an independent podcast, by the way, they're not off the hook either. They are driven by the incentive structure of outrage and quick reaction. And we have to flip that. And you know how easy it is to flip it? You can reward it. You can reward it. Vote with your like. Vote with your share. Try a little bit. Maybe over the next week. Take a second to maybe share 10 videos that aren't fucking crazy, but instead are about people listening and having conversation. Try that for a second. And here's the last piece. Here's where there's unfortunately the hope that I see out of this deep moment of tragedy and the political violence we've seen in the past, and we will unfortunately continue to see unless we get our shit together. And that is that there's a new counterculture brewing. As I just said, there's a disconnect between the reality on the ground between people and everyday conversations and the algorithms and what they feed us, what the media feeds us. On the algorithms and online, conflict, violence, discord, those are the norms. In real life, human love, empathy, curiosity, prayer, faith, free speech, goodwill, that's the norm. That is the counterculture. I've been so uplifted from 95 colleges, ideologically diverse, and these are students that actually give a shit. They're not your vanilla milquetoast bridge builders that some of you might think they are. And they sit there and they're saying, I have not heard from one person saying, let's not have the dialogue. Manu, let's have the conversation. Let's have more engagement. Let's listen to people that are different than us. Let's do it right now, because when else can we do it? In 2017, when I helped start Bridge USA, the norm was conversation. Today, the norm is conflict and violence. And America loves underdog. The underdog today is conversation. America bets on countercultures, on movements that are fighting the dominant norm. If you're out there in your family, in your group chat, on social media, on a college campus, and you're sitting there and you're saying, man, I want to have that conversation, you're actually the one with courage, not them. The last thing anyone's interested in is a loud person screaming. Because that's easy. That's easy. It does nothing. We've had guests from all over the political spectrum in the show, and we will continue to. Republican presidential candidates way back in the day. We had fascinating generals. We're going to have authors, conversationalists. The fact was that the attack and assassination of Charlie Kirk was not just an assassination of his human body and soul. It was an attack on the very ideals of American democracy. E pluribus unum, out of many, one. It was an attack on dialogue, on conversation. And this is not to my just conservative people. This is to my liberal brothers and sisters. Once you let violence out of the canister, it's like poison gas. There's no controlling which way it goes. And it is time to turn the tide. I feel it. I feel it. I'm so grateful to be here with people from across the country that are understanding and listening and lifting people up, because we need that now more than ever. Every Monday, we are on all platforms, YouTube, Spotify, Apple, trying to have these conversations, trying to have these dialogues, and give us a moment. Leave a like, leave a subscribe. Why? Because we have to push back against the algorithms. We have to fight the outrage industrial complex. And you and the young people that I work with on a daily basis are the counterculture. Don't forget that. And it's your choice to join it. I'm so grateful to be here with you on this incredibly sad week. And remember, I'm loud about this, about Charlie Kirk's assassination, because it hit a nerve in our country. I didn't make that choice, but you and I have a responsibility to make something positive out of this terrible tragedy, because it's for the sake of our country and our democracy. I'll see you next week.